You're listening to the audio production of The Introvert's Edge to Networking. Work the room, leverage social media, develop powerful connections. By Matthew Pollard with Derek Lewis. Published by HarperCollins Leadership and read by Jamie Jackson. Keep listening at the end of the book for a special bonus chapter by Matthew Pollard.
Wars are won in the general's tent. Stephen Covey. Forward by Jeb Blount. When the phone rang, I happened to be the one on my team to answer. The person on the other end of the line worked at a non-profit and wanted some sales training for his team. "How much is it?" he immediately asked. "Well, let me ask you a couple of questions first to make sure we're the right fit for each other," I said, artfully dodging the question. "Let's start with this. What is it about the work you do that's so meaningful for you?" For the next 45 minutes, I barely said a word. I let him tell me about his passion, his work, and his people. At the end of it, he said, "Look, I have this much money. Can you do it for that?" Without me really doing or saying anything, the prospect went from asking, "How much does it cost?" to, "Would you take my money, please?" We introverts have a natural ability that gives us the edge over extroverts. And yes, you heard that right. I, Jeb Blount, worldwide sales speaker and trainer, best-selling sales author, and co-founder of the global sales conference Outbound, am an introvert. In a room full of people, I'm not naturally going around shaking hands. I'm not great in social situations. I don't like large crowds and I don't like small talk. I like being by myself. In fact, when Matthew and I first met, we joked about how we lead such public business lives, but in private, prefer to live quietly. In the entire course of my professional sales career, I may have taken 2 client lunches. I never went golfing, never went with clients to sporting events. I never did anything all the extroverts were doing. And yet, I was always the number 1 salesperson in every position at every company I worked for, breaking previous records and setting new ones, some of which still stand to this day. What's the secret advantage we introverts have? The truth is, the most important skill in sales, as in networking, is listening. That's something introverts are great at. The reason I don't come across as an introvert to my customers is that instead of being shy and awkward like a typical introvert, I appear relaxed and confident, like a typical extrovert. I'm able to control a situation in which so many people, especially introverts, feel out of control. Sales isn't an extroverted mask I put on. It's a linear system I follow. This is exactly why I hit it off with Matthew the moment I met him. He takes a systems approach to sales too, as he showed in his first book, The Introvert's Edge, How the Quiet and Shy Can Outsell Anyone. While there are more successful introverted salespeople out there than most people suspect, Matthew was the first one who truly championed what many of us believed, that introverts make the best salespeople. It's about time someone said it. With the right system, introverts can go toe-to-toe with extroverts and beat them every time. Now, Matthew has done it again with his next book in the Introvert's Edge series, this time on networking. He's taken another area in which most introverts feel completely out of control and mapped out a step-by-step process that channels our natural strengths and provides a process to overcome our shortcomings. It's a totally different way of networking, created from an introvert's point of view. It doesn't force us to be something we're not. He doesn't tell us to hide our introverted tendencies or fake it till you make it. Instead, he simply gives us a way to be our natural selves and yet totally dominate the networking room. What an inspiring message for the billions of us introverts out there. What I love most about Matthew's system is that he shows how success doesn't hinge on the superficial, like speaking more loudly than everyone else, adopting the right body language, or mastering the handshake. Just like he says in his first book, the secret is in the system. You don't need to be charming or be born with the gift-of-gab. It's in the approach and in the frameworks that surround and support what happens in the room. But as all-important as networking success is, this book goes even further. For me, happiness isn't a state of being, it's a state of pursuit. Life is too short to live miserably. The Introvert's Edge to Networking is one of those rare books that shows you how to align what you believe is important with what you do to actually earn money. It not only makes you a powerful networker, but ensures you truly love doing it. People pay me to teach them about what I love most in the world. I wish everyone could experience the same thing. This book will show you how. Jeb Blount, CEO of Sales Gravy and author of Inked, the ultimate guide to powerful closing and negotiation tactics that unlock yes and seal the deal. 1. Why introverts make better networkers. Failure is only the opportunity to begin again more intelligently. Henry Ford. You'd rather get a root canal than go to a networking event. But you know you're supposed to, right? Everyone says how important it is in landing that dream job, securing your next client, or connecting with a high-level contact who could launch you into the stratosphere. You know you should do it, but it's just agony. Then something happens. Maybe you hear about potential layoffs. Maybe you look up from your work and realize you don't have any customers in the pipeline. Whatever the precipitating event, it takes something seriously scary enough to make that pain worthwhile, to get you out of your comfort zone and into the networking room. So you decide that yes, you have to go networking. You go online and find an upcoming event and say, all right, I can do this. You put it on your calendar. It hovers there for days. Part of you is freaking out. No, I don't want to go. Then another part yells back, you have to. There's a feeling of dread as you park your car and reluctantly head into the event. As you walk into the room, your eyes desperately dart around for a familiar face, even though you're trying to expand your network beyond the people you already know. It's far less daunting than approaching a stranger. All the while, you're thinking, what if no one likes me? What if this is a complete waste of my time? What if I say the wrong thing? It's like the first day of school all over again. Failing to see anyone you know, you muster your courage, take a deep breath, and approach the first person you see. Walking toward them, you feel your nervousness take hold. You shake hands and smile courteously. Then you go through the awkward song and dance of introducing yourself. Hi, I'm Jane Smith. Oh, John Doe? Nice to meet you. What do you do? You stand there, listening for an indicator that they are the person you're looking for. You're desperate for a new lead on a job, any job, or a new client, any client. He responds with, "Nice to meet you too, Jane. I sell insurance. I would love to talk to you about your insurance needs." Ugh. You didn't come to talk about insurance. "Oh, I think I'm good on insurance, but thank you." Now it's awkward until John Doe asks what you do. "Thank you for asking. I'm a business coach, accountant, or managed service provider." I already have a coach, accountant, or managed service provider I'm happy with." That's when you think, of course you do. So why did I come to this stupid thing in the first place? Now what? Do you try to tell him why you were better? Try to hustle him away from the person he just said he's happy with? You don't want to feel like you're shoving something down his throat. Perhaps you take the other path, somewhat desperately asking, "Do you know anybody else who might need a coach, accountant, or managed service provider?" John Doe says, "I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but I'll keep my ear to the ground. In the meantime, can I give you my card in case you change your mind about your insurance needs?" You don't want his card, but you take it to be polite. You know he's not going to change his mind either, and he wasn't really who you wanted to connect with in the first place. But you hold out hope that somehow this encounter will magically turn into a lead. What do you do now? You've both done the song and dance. You both realize there's no reason to go any further with the conversation. Neither of you wants to look like you're there only to hunt for your next lead. That would be rude. So you smile. One of you makes up an excuse about going to the bathroom or grabbing something to drink, and the other sighs in relief. Then you have to do the same thing all over again. Many networking books out there tell you to set a target, such as speaking to 5 people before you can go home. Perhaps you force yourself to go through the motions 4 more times. But of course, those conversations are just like the first. You find yourself wondering, why do people say networking is important? I've just wasted half my day. After 2 hours of sheer torture, you go back to your office to lick your wounds and deposit the stack of business cards received, putting them with all the others you've collected over time. All the people you're supposed to follow up with, but never do. You probably can't even remember what you spoke to them about. The only thing you know is that you didn't connect with the people you needed to, so why even bother? You get back to work, already behind because you spent half the day networking. I say spent, but the real word there is wasted. You're no closer to a good business connection than you were yesterday. You're actually worse off because you spent money on gas and the admittance fee, gave up your time, and severely drained your mental and emotional energy. You rationalize that your failure is because you're an introvert. After all, the extroverts you saw around the room looked like they were doing great. They must be locking down deals and promotions all the time. If only you could network like them. But you believe that's not possible for you. So you convince yourself, at least for now, to endure. 2 or 3 months later, things take a turn for the worse. In desperation, you think, I have no choice. I need to go back and network. You decide that this time you'll do better. You go online and read some networking tips and strategies. You try 1 or 2 of the tips, but networking is still as awkward, painful, and wasteful as before. The expert's advice doesn't make it any more bearable. To you, networking feels like trying to be someone you're not. Sure, it's easy for the extroverts, but networking makes you feel like an introverted square peg forced into an extroverted round hole. You feel sleazy and inauthentic, and you hate small talk. I guess I just don't have what it takes, you tell yourself. I've been there. For introverts like you and me, if we're willing to push ourselves to do it at all, networking like this is torture. It's not what we got into our chosen profession to do. We just wanted to earn a great living doing work we love that revolves around our families and our lives. Not spending our days, evenings, and even weekends fake smiling and engaging in inauthentic, exhausting self-promotion. How did we get into this mess? In her groundbreaking book for introverts, Quiet, Susan Cain reminds us that in 1790, only 3% of Americans lived in cities. By 1840, it was 8%. And by 1930, it was a little more than a third. In a sparsely populated rural area where everyone knew everyone else, your reputation was everything. As more and more people moved to the cities, however, those community networks became less and less relevant to daily life. As Cain notes, self-help books went from being about inner virtue to being heavily focused on outer charm. At the same time, due to the Industrial Revolution, factories were producing more goods than their local markets could handle, so they sent salespeople throughout the country peddling their wares. Before this, sales usually happened within the local community. You knew the person you were buying from. Merchants, dentists, and others couldn't afford to be known as dishonest or manipulative. Traveling salesmen didn't need to worry about their reputations, as Harvard Business Review suggests in the article, Birth of the American Salesman. They didn't create meaningful relationships with anyone they met, because they were doing business with complete strangers. These salesmen had a short window of time to introduce themselves, get into the house, present the product, secure the sale, and quickly move on to the next house. They could afford to churn and burn. In fact, to meet their quotas, they thought they had to. Salespeople didn't need to worry about selling inferior goods, or anything else for that matter, because in just a couple of days, they'd be off to the next town, doing it all over again. What does this have to do with networking? The same factors that led to a churn and burn mentality were recreated in the networking room as more and more people moved from sparsely populated rural areas into densely populated cities. After all, even today, in many major cities, you'll probably never again see the person you're networking with. It's why networking, as most people do it today, feels more like door-to-door sales, walking from person to person with a focus on selling as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Creating a meaningful, lasting relationship comes in as a distant second, if at all. This standard approach is what I call transactional networking. Is it any surprise that it feels inauthentic and even sleazy? Thankfully, there are those who reject this approach and who do want to create true connections. But they practice what I call aimless networking. While they may come from a more authentic place, their unstructured approach isn't any more effective than transactional networking. It still results in a lot of small talk, shallow connections, and few successes. No wonder introverts hate this type of networking so much, me included. This is the exact opposite of how we like to operate. If I had to participate in transactional networking, I couldn't live with myself. If I were an aimless networker, I'd quickly see that it was a complete waste of time and stop networking altogether. So, how can we compete with extroverts who seem to have natural charisma, the gift of gab, and the ability to effortlessly form connections? How can we succeed at networking while feeling authentic? I'm here to give you good news. Introverts can outperform their extroverted counterparts by realizing two truths. 1. The introvert's roadmap to success doesn't look like the extrovert's. We're different, and we need to embrace that. 2. Traditional networking doesn't work for introverts. We need a smarter approach that leverages our natural strengths. For introverts, effective networking doesn't look like traditional networking at all. In fact, what I've learned, experienced, and taught is that introverts have a natural edge when it comes to the way networking should really be done. Not playing a numbers game and talking to as many people as possible, but by being strategic, being prepared, practicing, and knowing how to cultivate deeper relationships with just a few of exactly the right people in the room. In other words, by playing a totally different game. This is timely because the old way of networking is quickly becoming obsolete. People can learn all about you, read reviews on the products you sell, see your personal affiliations, learn your employment history, and sometimes even check up on what you did last weekend, all from a phone they carry in their pocket. We're returning to those days when everybody knew everybody, or at least living in a world where people can get a great synopsis quickly. It's almost impossible to be transactional and then return to obscurity. Transparency is becoming the norm, either by choice or necessity, for individuals as well as employers. Authenticity and inner virtue are back on the rise. Finally. Stop copying the extroverts. Instead of trying to show you how to network like an extrovert, I want to show you how to sidestep that self-destructive behavior. I've discovered a way of networking that leverages our introverted strengths. It allows us to walk out of every room feeling like we've made powerful connections, portrayed the best version of ourselves, and remained authentically us the whole time. Before we go any further, you should know that what I'm about to share with you will require a commitment of anywhere from several hours to a few days of planning, preparation, and practice. One thing I know about introverts, though, is that we're willing to put in the work to obtain a consistently successful outcome, especially when the alternative is more lost time and energy while obtaining near zero results. The two types of networking we discussed earlier are not only wrong, but harmful. The transactional approach is purely about one-time deals. I'm sure you don't think of yourself as a selfish person, but this type of networking is inherently self-centered. It's like speed dating, quickly going through as many people as possible until you find someone who'll give you a chance. Put another way, you're trying to get through all the nobodies as quickly as you can until you can find someone you can use to get what you want. To make matters worse, everyone you're speaking to knows this is what you're doing. Sure, you might get a few sales or opportunities, but think about the last time someone behaved this way toward you. Didn't it feel shallow and slimy? That's not the taste I'd like to leave in anyone's mouth, and it's definitely not the path to a higher income and a supportive network. aimless networkers, on the other hand, generally walk out with a good feeling, having had some friendly conversations that, unfortunately, ultimately lead nowhere. They may have cultivated acquaintances, but they've created a network that has very little motivation to help them toward their goals. They drift through networking, hoping that somehow something good will come from their efforts. It's like throwing quarters into a slot machine, hoping one day to win the jackpot. However, there is a third type of networking: strategic networking. It's a smarter and more effective style, one that introverts can dominate. Network strategically, and you'll be rewarded with connections to people who value your work and who would love to help you reach your goals faster. It's your ticket off the hamster wheel. Changing the balance. I discovered strategic networking when I moved across the globe to Austin, Texas, where I didn't know a soul except Brittany, now my wife. While in Australia, I enjoyed a moderately sized network I'd spent a lifetime awkwardly fostering. In my new home, I was confronted with creating a new network totally from scratch. So I set out on a journey of discovery to make networking easy, fun, and profitable. More than that, I set upon discovering a system that would leverage my introverted strengths, allow me to feel authentic, and give me the edge over my extroverted counterparts. Along the way, I learned something profound. Networking, just like with sales, is a system that can be learned and improved upon by anyone, anywhere. Better yet, done well, you can change the balance. Instead of feeling like you're forcing something on people that they didn't ask for, you can get them asking questions because they're genuinely interested. Going from push to pull was everything for me. With the right system and process, I don't need to be funny, competitive, or gregarious. When it comes down to it, 90% of networking success, at least the way I do it, happens outside the room. I focus on strategy and preparation, not on trying to be charismatic and energetic. My system ensures that introverts, if they're willing to do the prep work, easily have an edge over their extroverted counterparts. Naturally outgoing extroverts can walk into a room and just wing it. While it often comes off as transactional, they're usually unwilling to put in the time and effort my process requires. After all, they've made it this far on their own. Why fix something that they don't see as broken? Introverts, on the other hand, love being super prepared and equipped for success before they ever walk into the room. In the long run, my introverted clients far outperform their extroverted peers because they stick to the process, one that allows their natural gifts, such as active listening and empathy, to shine. While what you're about to learn will require work, if you put in the effort, it can change your life in a matter of weeks, not months or years. In my first book, I talk about how I learned how to systemize my sales process by watching YouTube videos and practicing at home 8 hours a day after a full day's work. I share my journey of going from having no business being in sales, being terrified really, to becoming the top producer in the nation within just 6 weeks. I wouldn't wish that 6 weeks on anyone, but I've carried that training with me the rest of my life. What you're going to discover in this book won't require anywhere near that level of intensity, but the idea is the same. Put in the work, systemize the process, reap the rewards. It's hard to get people to stop and spend a few days on strategy and preparation. Either they're desperate to get instant results, or they feel that activity, no matter how frenzied, equals progress. They believe the hustle will make them successful, that all they need to do is work hard enough and the results will automatically appear. That may work in the short term, but eventually it burns you out. Instead, if you'll spend just a short time learning and preparing each day for just a few days, you'll catapult forward. Throughout this book, we're going to tackle just about every kind of situation you can imagine, including someone on the brink of losing everything, someone who saw herself as too old, people who felt underqualified, people who said, "I have no charisma," and those who thought they were socially awkward. You're going to read about people who work in careers or run their own businesses, from marketing and consulting to multi-million-dollar companies and enterprise-level organizations. This system has been tried and tested. It works. But don't take my word for it. Take Charlene's. You're never too old to network. After gardening in the Midwest for most of her life, Charlene Westgate moved to Arizona and found herself presented with a new challenge. How do you make the desert bloom? Through a lot of trial and error, talking with locals and research, Charlene discovered a few truths. 1. She couldn't force her will on her garden. She had to work with her newfound arid climate, not against it. 2. She found the challenge deeply fulfilling. Eventually, she taught herself how to create a thriving garden in the Arizona heat. When she talked to others about her passion, she found that plenty of people wanted to hear about what she'd learned. Realizing she'd found something special, Charlene quit her full-time job and opened Westgate Garden Design. After 9 months, though, she still hadn't replaced her full-time income. As a matter of fact, she was struggling to make any money at all. It put a strain on her household and she grew desperate. When she went into networking events, she found that people didn't really get the value of what she did. She explained how she helped create beautiful gardens that thrived in the arid landscape of Arizona. When people heard the words garden and landscape, they said, "So you're a landscape architect." Charlene would then say that no, she didn't hold the required degree. They would look confused and say, "Okay, if you aren't the architect, do you do the landscaping work?" Given her age, obviously she wouldn't be doing the back-breaking labor. Because she didn't fit into one box or another, people didn't get why they should hire her. It got to the point that in Charlene's words, I was willing to take money from just about anyone doing anything just to make ends meet. I wasn't even bringing in minimum wage. Networking events were awful, she told me. But she didn't know how else to get the clientele she needed, so she kept going. Event after event, she felt more devalued, more underestimated, and grew more frustrated with trying. Her confidence was shot. By the time I met Charlene, she'd almost done what, sadly, so many introverted professionals have done in the past. Convinced herself that she didn't have what it takes to be successful in business. She wasn't too far away from giving up and closing her business for good. I helped Charlene see that her problem was that she wasn't articulating her value in a way that made her stand out, that inspired interest, and that made her the only logical choice to hire. The real key was that no one knew how to deal with the Arizona climate as she'd learned to. Charlene finally saw that what she did was something no one else could offer. Finding a way to create a beautiful backyard oasis harmonized with the arid terrain that nature had provided. Soon she was back at networking events, armed with well-planned statements, emotionally driven stories, and differentiation-focused messaging, all of which you will learn about in the pages that follow. When asked what she did, Charlene would talk about how she hates seeing people spend fortunes creating an amazing backyard only to have it die due to a challenging climate that no one, not even the experts, seems to know how to handle. She would then ask if they knew anyone who had a blank backyard because they believed nothing could survive, or spent money with a contractor only to have everything die. Of course, this was a quite common issue. She would then share her own gardening struggles when she first moved and how she learned to harmonize everything with the terrain. Then she'd explain how she used to have a full-time job but gave it up to focus on her lifetime mission of helping people have the same backyard oasis she enjoys every day. Finally, she'd tell a pre-planned story of someone she'd worked with in the past, the person's struggles getting anything to grow, and the amazing outcome she delivered. Or by the end of that, even listeners only partly interested in their backyard couldn't help thinking, "Oh wow, I want that." I know the first time she explained it to me, I sure did. All the previous objections around landscape architects and contractors didn't even come up. Price also didn't seem to matter. Soon she found herself being asked to speak at events, and business boomed. Originally, Charlene just hoped to earn a decent income doing what she loved, and to surprise her husband with a trip to the Alamo. Today, she's far exceeded her income expectations, won 2 prestigious Small Business of the Year awards, and received an unsolicited invitation to appear on local television. All this just about 12 months after getting ready to close her business forever. All because she found an effective, authentic way to network. To use Charlene's words from a recent interview we did together, this just proves you're never too old to create your dream business. Okay, Matthew, I hear you say, good for her. You love small businesses and you helped a small business, hooray. But I have a full-time job. How does this apply to me? Ask yourself, what if Charlene was an employee of a landscaping company instead of in business for herself? She could have easily applied the same networking process to help her employer bring in new clients. Don't you think her boss would be ecstatic with that and consider giving her a pay raise? Or what if Charlene weren't customer-facing? What if she were to create a reputation inside the company for specializing in backyard oases that survive the Arizona heat? Do you think that she might be promoted or entrusted with the most high-profile clients' backyards? How long would it be before other companies were coming to her for advice and even trying to hire her away? But we don't have to guess what would have happened to Charlene. We can look to Justin's example. Networking success as a bank employee. When I first met Justin McCulloch, he was Capital One's VP of E-commerce and National Small Business. He'd been a corporate employee all his life, except for one business that had left him horribly in debt. In fact, he'd just finally finished paying it off. At Capital One, he specialized in marketing to small businesses through customer-centric initiatives, just as he had in all his past positions. He loved that he got to help small businesses within his job. The problem was, he didn't like working for such a big corporate machine, hated that his job took him away from his family for more than half the year, and felt unchallenged by his day-to-day tasks. He was passionate about having a greater impact on a wider number of businesses, and was determined to be around more to watch his 2 boys grow up. He decided it was time to go into business for himself again, and launch his own consulting practice. Like many incredibly brilliant people who come to me for help, his biggest problem wasn't ability, but explaining his value in a way that didn't overcomplicate things. To simplify it, the best Justin could come up with was that he helped people obtain customers and drive loyalty through customer-centric experiences. I first pointed out that customer-centric experiences to the average business owner sounded like a cost, not a way to quickly grow their customer base. The verbiage might interest some people, but it wouldn't prick up ears in a networking room. Plus, it spoke to the work, where most people get stuck, as opposed to the true value Justin provided. Instead, I suggested he focus his message on the concepts of growth, speed, quick results, and so on. Then he could further hone his message to being the architect or catalyst of such growth via customer centricity. I then helped him discover 3 stories from his past experiences from both employment and from his own small business to use in networking events to explain the power of what he offered. Armed with that, and the planned networking process we will be sharing in the chapters to come, he was ready to successfully network as an introvert. But before Justin could put all his hard work into action, tragedy struck his home of Orange, Texas, in the form of Hurricane Harvey. The flooding was catastrophic, destroying more than 100,000 homes. Justin and his family vividly remember wading out in waist-high water and climbing into the back of a giant canvas-backed truck to be rescued by the National Guard and taken to a local church shelter. They lost everything. And while he had insurance, it didn't account for the months of cleanup that bled his business startup fund and personal savings dry. Understandably, he didn't want to launch a business in a disaster zone while his family picked up the pieces of their lives. What they needed was stability, time to heal, and a new city for a fresh start. He decided that he would put his dreams on hold, leave his family behind, travel to Austin, and do everything he could to obtain employment, quickly, so his family could join him. No one could blame Justin for being in panic mode. The stress of losing all your possessions, the uncertainty of the future, the pressure to provide, tapped-out savings, living miles from his family, and no end in sight until he landed a job. No one would fault Justin's spray and pray shotgun approach. He called every recruiter, went to every networking event and told everyone he met that he was looking for a job. But the way he presented himself put him into the commodity box of being just another marketing executive. At networking events, potential employers would ask about his background, which led to a conversation about Hurricane Harvey and losing everything. While people genuinely sympathized with his plight, nobody wanted to hire a guy looking for a job just because he was desperate and had few options. A few weeks into this phase of his life, I called to check on him. He shared his struggles of landing a decent job. I asked him, "Justin, what are you telling them?" After he'd recounted his experiences, I saw that he'd completely put his message, passions, and powerful explanatory stories aside. He said that he didn't think it would work for getting a job. "How is what you're doing today working for you?" I asked. "It's not. It's time to own who you are, Justin. You are passionate about business growth through customer-centric experiences. Put that on your resume. You also told me that you felt motivated to provide value to a wider number of businesses. Did you know many big corporations are in fact an amalgamation of multiple mid-sized businesses? Why not also add to your resume that you'd be an ideal fit for an organization needing help across multiple business units? Next, I want you to understand that networking for a job is exactly the same as networking for new clients. You're still trying to stand out and establish long-term relationships with people. The only difference is you're doing it to land one long-term customer instead of several. So when networking, and in your interviews for that matter, make sure to introduce your differentiation-focused messaging and use your stories to show your in-depth knowledge and value. For anyone who hasn't gone through this grueling process, an executive-level hire is no small feat. In fact, it's one of the riskiest things a company can do. But after Justin went back to embracing his uniqueness, he landed 3 strong offers by networking and interviewing as an interesting outlier instead of someone who just checked the boxes for the job posting. One of those offers was from Facility Solutions Group, an almost $1 billion commercial lighting, electrical, and energy products and services company, with multiple small and medium-sized business units operating under its umbrella. At the interview, Justin shared his stories and passion for helping multiple business units grow through customer-centric experiences. Finally, the interviewer said, "You know, Justin, I think you're overqualified for this position. But man, I just know our CEO would love to meet you and hear your ideas. Can you come in tomorrow to meet him for an hour?" What was supposed to be a 1-hour meeting with the CEO lasted for 5 hours. Then they met for an additional 2 days, discussing different ways to work together that would make the most of Justin's skills and passion. In the end, they created a brand new position for him as the Chief Innovation and Product Officer, 2 levels above the original job he'd interviewed for and at a salary 6 figures more than the one he'd been applying for. Even better, the role would have him based mostly in Austin, without the crazy travel schedule required of him at Capital One. What if Justin didn't own his uniqueness, passion, and stories? In truth, he is an intelligent, talented person and would have landed on his feet. But would he have obtained his dream job, one he now tells me he loves more than working for himself and allows him to spend more time with his family? Probably not. I love seeing Justin's social posts of nights and weekends with his wife and boys. They all look so happy in their new Austin life. That's the power of being the outlier and knowing exactly how to back it up. It always surprises me when I hear people commoditizing themselves when trying to land a top-shelf job. At those levels, company leaders want to hire someone exceptional, who brings a unique perspective to the task. Yet most candidates present themselves the same way, then wonder why they weren't offered the job. That's why it's so important to know how to articulate your difference, inside and outside the networking room. Even for an entry-level position, who wouldn't want to hire and promote someone who's really thought about their uniqueness and how it would benefit the right employer versus someone else who just goes through the motions? Employers would much rather work with someone who is passionate and focused. Justin landed a dream job because he had the courage to network in a way congruent with who he was, because he could clearly articulate his value and because he was willing to trust the process. Networking out of your hoodie. I hope you're excited to overhaul the way you network and are ready to transform your business or career as Charlene, Justin, and so many others have. Before we get to that, let me share one last story about why The Introvert's Edge to Networking had to be my second book, and why it's so close to my heart. One day, a fan reached out to share that I'd helped his son, Joel Turner, make friends at school. Joel had always shown an interest in business books and happened to pick up my first book, The Introvert's Edge, How the Quiet and Shy Can Outsell Anyone, from the family coffee table. After reading it, he decided that if conversations that resulted in sales could be systemized, then maybe conversations that resulted in friends could too. His dad told me that Joel actually walked around school with my book in hand as he taught himself how to make friends. I was fascinated and delighted by this story and wanted to speak to Joel myself. He told me that he used to hide under his hoodie and hated making eye contact but desperately wanted friends. He felt so lonely and excluded. After putting my book to use, he started a dialogue with some of the popular kids. He began feeling like he was in control of the discussion. He began making friends, then getting into more activities. Now, there's even a girl in the picture. Today, the hoodie is off for good. I think it goes without saying how proud his father is of him. Joel had gone from being withdrawn to now confident and excited about going to school. What a change! All from grasping that making new friends and connections could be a system. The Introvert's Edge Networking System. So how do you go from an awkward and uncomfortable networker to a networking powerhouse like Charlene, Justin, and even Joel? Well, the answer, as I mentioned earlier, lies in the 3 P's: planning, preparation, and practice. We're going to kick off the steps to this process in Chapter 2 by channeling your superpower, your passions. Essentially, we're going to connect a deep-seated sense of purpose to your professional networking aims. While it may sound too good to be true, this will tap into an endless well of energy that will make you want to network. Shortly before writing this, I saw a Facebook post from Charlene saying she was excited about heading out to a networking event. Wouldn't you love to feel like that? Chapter 3 is about niching, which may seem odd to include in a networking book. After all, this is about how to connect with people, not do a market segmentation analysis, right? But, just like Justin, you need to accept that success doesn't come from being everything to everyone, but being the only logical choice to a select few. Chapter 4 is about harnessing the power of story. I'll talk about the hard science behind why stories are a better vehicle of communication than just reciting facts, and why they're a powerful tool in rapport generation. These aren't your typical business case studies. You'll discover how to create emotionally charged stories that articulate your value and that position you as the only logical choice. Chapter 5 shows you how to uncover the secret to instantly evoking interest, setting yourself apart, and changing the balance of networking conversations for good. No more will you feel like you're shoving what you do down people's throats. Instead, they'll be asking for more details because they're genuinely interested. This is the crown jewel of my networking system, and was the turning point in my own networking journey as well as many of my clients. In Chapter 6, I introduced the idea that beyond prospective employers or prospective customers, there are two other, more important types of people you want to network with. I'll also show you a simple trick I uncovered to identify, categorize, and even start a discussion with attendees before even walking into the networking room. Get ready to feel the pressure dissipate as we transition networking from a series of first-time meetings to a series of pre-planned discussions. In Chapter 7, I tell you exactly what to say when you get in the room. I show you how to plan your discussions so that the conversation goes just where you need it to. Then I present the 3 different results you want to have with the 3 different types of people identified in Chapter 6, leaving them wanting more and providing them an easy way to get it. In Chapter 8, we'll discuss what to do after you leave the room. You'll put an end to the pile of cards on your desk and instead turn them into introductions, deals, and media. No more guessing what to do. No more awkward callbacks. I'll show you exactly how to get your ideal prospects to chase you. Chapter 9 is about having the right mindset for the entire process, seeing it as a system to be continually improved upon rather than a one-and-done effort. I liken it to an assembly line such as Henry Ford's. His brilliance was in continuous improvement. That's the key to your networking success too, perfecting the process. In the final chapter, I'll show you how your hard work in perfecting your networking system locally will become the catalyst to networking globally, all through the power of technology, psychology, and strategy. The entire goal of this book is to help you master the room, so you never have to go back into one, unless you really want to. This book will give you everything you need to implement my system in your networking efforts. And in the bonus material, which I discuss at the back of the book, you'll find a wealth of information to help you fully cultivate your introvert's edge. With this book and the bonus resources at your fingertips, nothing can stop you from becoming the master strategic networker you were always destined to be. Now, let's discover the first element of the introvert's edge networking system. Delving into your passion to come up with your mission. A mission that drives everything else.